everyone, this is your Entrep guru Avinash Ramsapal, and today we're going to do the stages of the business venture life cycle. So you may be wondering, what is a venture life cycle? And what it is that it refers to the stages that a business may go through from when it starts till when the business may actually end, or when the entrepreneur themselves may choose to extend the life of that business. So it will, most of the times it will consist of different phases along that way. But one thing that we must always make sure and remember is that the time that it takes to go through these phases may vary from business to business. So what is the purpose of knowing the stage that you are at in the venture life cycle? The first thing that we look at is that you will be able to anticipate any kinds of challenges that the business will face. Now, what happens is that depending on where you are in this venture life cycle, for example, let's say you are now starting, you would realize that, okay, you have a lot of challenges when it comes to adjusting in terms of the market itself, being able to understand your customers. You may not have as much competitors at that point in time. All right. Later on, when you start to see that you may enter into your growth stage, or even when you reach maturity, when competition is even more, you would realize that there's a different type of challenge that you may be faced with. So you have to be able to understand that at different stages you will face different challenges. You would also need to know it in order to make an informed decision, so that you will be able to determine strategies that you can use at each point in time. You would also be able to tailor strategies to meet the stage that you are at in that venture life cycle. We will also be able to determine our resource allocation. So in terms of how much money you may need to put out at that point in time, or not just money, but in terms of other types of resources. So for example, let's say you're entering into that expansion stage. You may need more resources, such as you may need more human resources. You may need to expand your physical resources, such as your land and your land and building. You may need to get more inventory, all of those kinds of stuff. The stage also helps you to determine your risk management strategies. So what will happen is, depending on where you are at, you will be able to implement various risk management strategies to deal with what is more prevalent during those stages. And finally, it helps in terms of any kind of future planning, if it is that we are able to anticipate what will be next to happen in the stage afterwards. Now, one thing that we must remember is our Cape Entrepreneurship syllabus gives us two different formats to use. Now, what we have to bear in mind is that, for example, as we see here for format 1, we are using the startup, then expansion, then maturity, and we can go into diversification, lifestyle. During maturity, you may reach that area of cap growth. So this is format 1. What we have to bear in mind is that the terminologies that we use here in format 1 should not be mixed up with the terminologies of format 2. And therefore, if it is that in a question you decide to use format 1 to explain, ensure that you are using everything from format 1 and not mixing it up with format 2. All right. So as I said, format 1, we start off with our startup stage, and that is the first phase or the initial phase, and this is where the business is actually formed. Then afterwards, we go into expansion, which is where we have rapid growth taking place, and this is an area where, yes, a lot of businesses like to see it, but at the same time, you have to make sure and manage it carefully. Otherwise, you could end up in what we call diseconomies of scale. We also have to ensure that we make sure and manage how we invest our resources properly. In the following stage will be our maturity stage, and this one is where the company kind of has a greater level of stability happening now, in terms of their sales are leveling off, still increasing, but the rate at which that increase is happening is decreasing, right? If you get what I'm saying there. And what is happening, the reasoning for that is that yes, sales may be increasing, but you may see that a lot more competitors are taking note of what your business is doing, and more of those competitors may decide to get into the industry. So we have to note that we may have to do things to make ourselves different. Now, eventually we would reach that stage of cap growth, meaning that we have reached our limits. The market has become saturated. We cannot go any further. And what would happen is that eventually after that stage, sales would start to decline. Now, what has to happen is that we need to decide on what we are doing. Are we going to diversify, right? Meaning, are we going to try to change what we are offering? Or is it that we want to maintain what we have, right? And this is where we have to choose between diversification and lifestyle. So we'll take a look at those a little more now. So in that startup stage, as I said, that this is the beginning stage. You're laying the foundation for the business. So what you are doing, you have to develop your product or service. You have to secure funding, build your brand identity. So try and see to establish your brand in the market. Start attracting your first customers. And how do we do that? We have to try and persuade people to purchase from our business. We have to inform them about our business. So we really have to get more people to come to our business. And what we have to understand is that we do face a lot of risk at this point in time. Some of the key points here is that it is a high risk, right? Especially when you now start up. But obviously, when you now start, you can get a very high reward if people take to your business very quickly. And that will depend on these marketing strategies that you put into place too, right? The focus is more on creating a market presence. And typically your business won't make a lot of money at this point in time. You may actually find that your business is making a loss at this point in time because you're spending a lot of money trying to get people to come to your business. The next stage that we have is our expansion stage. And at this point in time, right, your business will start to gain some more momentum and stuff like that. And you'll realize that your customer base starts to increase. And it may increase at a rapid rate. Because of this, what you will find is that we have to scale operations. And what that means is that with scaling of operations, you are not just increasing sales. But what it means is that throughout the entire company, things may have to increase. So for example, you may need more staff, you may need more inventory, you may need more suppliers, you may need more larger machinery. Right? You may need more physical space. You may need more storage capacity. So what you would find is that you need to scale operations to suit that increase in terms of sales. You may also at this point in time start to explore some more markets in terms of geographic or in terms of other types of markets. So the key points here, focus on growth and increasing your market share, and you may not yet be profitable, but what you would find is that eventually you will get it, right? Now, it is at this point in time we have to start, if we all realize already, right? At all of these stages, we're talking about some form of expansion strategy or growth strategies. And it is at this point in time we need to start setting our minds for Cape entrepreneurship and the fact that is like we need to pay attention to that idea of evaluating growth strategies, which is another topic that we have in Module 3, and we will be doing that a little later. We move on to maturity, and this is where the business is now you're more established, more customers are taking note of your business. More competitors are taking note of your business. And as you would see here, because of that, the business has to start to try to see if it is that they can find a way to differentiate themselves a little bit more. So they need to start to innovate a little bit more. So the focus is more on efficiency, maintaining profits. And one of the things that I would say to the focus should also be on differentiation and establishing a sustainable, unique selling point. At this point in time, your cash flow should be positive and you should at least start making a profit. But as I had indicated before, growth will start to slow down. Now, as I had indicated, eventually you would reach that stage of cap growth. And with cap growth, it is when your sales, right, have reached a peak. So basically it is that you have reached that point at which the market is saturated, right? There's no more growth to take place. And you have to make a decision as to what exactly you're going to do. Now, that decision could eventually mean that you choose a form of extension strategy by diversifying your product, by changing what you are doing, or you can choose to maintain what you are currently doing. So the first thing that you can do, as I said, you can look at a diversification strategy in terms of entering a new market, launching a new product, acquiring other businesses, right? And in this case here, this may actually kick off further revenue for your business. So the whole point of it is to try and see what you can do to change your current situation or the situation where you're heading towards. But the next one that you can choose to do, right, is to look at a lifestyle, go into that lifestyle stage where you just try to make sure that your income is stable and you are able to at least keep that business afloat. So in this case, you are generating a consistent income. You're not really seeking to grow, right? But you want to make a sustainable income. So the business, there's no major growth goals, as we would see, right? And you just want to make sure that you sustain that income overall. So this is format 1 that we have looked at here. We now take a look at format 2, and format 2 has 5 stages compared to the previous one. And this one is looking at new venture development. So these are stages before you actually start. And then afterwards, we go into startup activities, which is when you actually launch your business. Then we go into venture growth once it happens. And this is where, again, similar to format 1, is when sales would have kicked off. And then afterwards, we would have reached a stabilization stage. And that stabilization stage is very much similar to that maturity stage of format 1. And then we have to make that decision of whether we're going to innovate in order to extend the life of our product, or we're going to go into decline. So in terms of new venture development, some of the things that you would do here, right? As you would see, it's looking more at idea generation and planning. And you will try to do more market research to figure out what customers want, to try and see what problems customers have or what pain points they have. Based on that market research, it can feed you information that can assist with regards to feasibility analysis, and you can also develop your business model and then your business plan. Now, during this stage, you don't know exactly what's going on for sure as yet, so there is a high level of uncertainty, and the focus is more on getting data, right, and validating data, right? And you may try to see if it is that you can get some assistance at this point in time in order to develop your idea a little bit more. Now, with the startup activities now, is when you would actually launch your venture. So based on what you would have done before, you can launch your venture, and you might try to finalize. And one of the advice that persons are given is, don't try to launch a minimum viable product. So you can actually put that onto the market and see how people respond to it. And then based on it, you can actually make changes to the product along the way, rather than investing a lot of money in terms of a final product and then persons don't like it. And this is one of the areas with lean production, by the way, right? In terms of startup too, you may want to register a company, open your bank accounts and stuff like that. You may also want to build your brand identity. Now, at this point in time, you're going to actually spend a lot of money, right? Because remember, you have been putting this, getting this business off the ground, right? And therefore, it is very important that you make sure and manage that cash flow properly also, all right? You will also have to ensure that you have a proper committed team, right? After startup activities, we enter into venture growth once it is that you have passed that startup stage. And in this case, your business starts to grow. And similar to the expansion stage of format 1, you would want to make sure that you scale your business to suit in terms of your growth. All right. So what will happen here? You will have a market expansion. You will have to scale the business operations, and you may also have to try to get more funding to grow that business. So it may mean going to persons like venture capitalists to try and see if it is that they will be willing to invest in your business expansion strategies. Some of the key things here is that you will prioritize scalable sales channels. You will try to maintain cash avenues, so ways in which you can get money to assist your business in growing, right? But make sure and be careful with the culture. And again, please remember, this economies of scale can set in. We then move on to our business stabilization stage, very much similar to that maturity stage of format 1. And in this case, now what is happening again, sales may continue growing, but what happens again is that the rate at which that growth is taking place is a lot slower. All right. So in that case now, right, the whole point of it is that, well, the whole reason for it, one of them would be that customers are getting a little more accustomed to the product. In addition to what may happen is that you would have a lot more competitors in the market. So you really have to try and build that level of loyalty from the customers. So try and make sure that you can do things to retain your customers. You may also try to see if it is that you could streamline operations, try to make it a little more efficient so that maybe you can reduce your operating costs. And also you may try to do what you could in order to try and increase profitability otherwise. So as much as possible, try to increase efficiency, right, of your business. At this point in time, what would happen again is that you would reach a saturation stage. Now, by the time you reach a saturation stage, you should have at least started working on some form of innovation. All right, it does help because by the time you actually get into that innovation and decline stage, if you don't start the process before, it could be too late. So we move on to innovation and decline after maturity. And what we're saying here is that either you innovate or your business goes into a natural decline and eventually your business will die a natural death. All right. So if you innovate, you enter into research and development, you try and change up what you are offering. You maybe try to get a more sustainable, unique selling point. If it is that you are able to do so, then afterwards what will happen is that you may enter into what we call an extension strategy for your business, where sales kicks off a bit. On the other hand, if you chose not to do anything, your business could actually continue as it is for a period of time, or as time goes along, you would see sales decreasing, until eventually you would reach that stage where you have to make a decision as to what you're going to do with your business. All right. So the main thing here, though, is that when you innovate, it makes your business more relevant. You try to keep those areas in your business that gets you the most money all the time, and also timely decision making. If you remember, as I said, if you don't start working fast, so therefore being proactive is very important. If you don't start working in that stabilization stage, then this stage is going to be a bit of a problem for you. All right, so that's it for me for today. I want to thank you, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Entrep Guru. Take care. Bye.